All right, so today we are going to learn something called one-point linear perspective. And I'm going to try and get in here and show this to you in such a way that I don't block your view, but show you how to do it. Linear perspective is a mathematical system of drawing that was discovered during the Renaissance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in this case, we're going to look at one-point linear perspective today. And the very first thing that we start with is called the vanishing point. In one-point linear perspective, there is one vanishing point. And basically, if you had to define it, it is the point in the distance where your eye is looking. So if I'm looking straight down, a row of buildings or a bunch of boxes, and I'm looking past them to a point in the distance, this would be where my eye is looking. And I'm going to show you how to draw boxes today in one-point linear perspective. You will need a ruler, and I'm just going to start with a basic, if I'm looking straight down the top of a building or a box. We always start in one point with the face of the box or the cube that is closest to us. So I'm going to start by creating a little rectangle or square. Doesn't really matter to me whether you go long, tall, wide, or perfectly square. But I'm going to start with the face. And this is the facing side. It's the side that's, facing our feet or whatever's in front of us if we're looking at little blocks on the floor. What you've got to do is take a look at your vanishing point and the corners of this box. If I look at this bottom right corner and line up the corner with my vanishing point, you'll see right away that if I were to draw a line, it's going to pass through my faceplate. I wouldn't be able to see that, so I don't want to draw that line. I'm going to go to the upper right corner of this front box, however, and if I draw a line from that corner to my vanishing point, that line is called an orthogonal. These terms were developed a long time ago, but you do need to know what they are. They will be on your test. So the line that goes off into space when you're looking at a building or you're looking at a street and it looks like it would meet somewhere in the distance is called the orthogonal line. If I go to the upper right or upper left corner of the box and make a line, now I've got two orthogonals. But if I go to this bottom corner, again, I would end up going through my front box, and I don't want to do that. Now I have to determine how thick or how long is this box that I'm creating. Wherever I decide to make it, however long I decide to make it, the key is that I have to look at my front box and the same edge. If I'm doing the top of the box, I have to look at the top line on my front face box. And I want to make this line parallel. I don't want it to tilt. It's got to be straight. And then I can take my ruler and I can get rid of my orthogonal line back there. And I now have a box that looks three-dimensional. If I'm standing here, this is me. Or in your case, you. But if I'm standing here and I'm looking out, and this box is in front of me but smaller than I am, or below me, maybe I'm standing in a tall building looking down at some smaller buildings or something, I would see the front that's facing me and I would see the top of that building, but I wouldn't be able to see the two sides. However, if I have a building that is over to one side, and I'm just using the thickness of my ruler for the purposes of making this easy. Now I have a different scenario. Again, I have my face. And if I looked here and tried to line this up with my vanishing point, that line would go through my box. I don't want it to do that. So I can check my other 3 corners though, and all 3 of them can connect directly to the vanishing point without passing through the front face box. And then I've got to cut them off again. So if I'm seeing the front face, I'm seeing the top, and I'm, on this case, seeing the side that's closest to me. But I can't see the side that's away from me. So I'm going to look at this front face box. I'm going to determine how long I want my building to be. And this line and this line must be parallel. And this is probably the biggest mistake that new drawers make. They twist this. They try to tilt this line. Don't let it tilt. Same thing with the front line. I'm going to look at my front face box. I'm doing the side here, so I want to go with the side line of the box. I want to line it up so it's parallel with this here, and the temptation is always to tilt it. Don't let it tilt. And again, then I can go in and erase my orthogonals. You can build an entire city doing this sort of technique. You can put roadways between your buildings. If I find the center here, I can go back in here and basically give that semblance of a street going back in the distance. You can do different shapes of buildings as well. If I wanted to do an L-shaped building, actually I could do an upside down T, it doesn't really matter. The key is understanding what you can and you can't see. From where you're standing. This vanishing point is higher than anything on this building. So I'm going to be able to see the tops of each of those flat surfaces. It's also, the entire building is to the right of it, so I'm going to be able to see the left side of each of those surfaces. So here's again the key. I go from one corner to the next, and if I can draw the line to the vanishing point without passing through the building or passing through the front face, then I draw it. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Right over here, if I go to the inside corner, I can draw this line, but only until I hit the front face. If it hits the face, I have to stop drawing it. Now I cut it off. I can decide wherever I want how deep I want this building, but then I have to look. Front box, this wall, this line. Make it parallel. This line, parallel to this line. This line here is going to be parallel to this little one in front. I have to look at which rectagonal prism I'm drawing, or which parallelogram I'm drawing, as the case may be, to cut things off. If I were to continue this over, this line would be where this one would end, which would be in the middle of the building, so I don't need to worry about cutting it off over there. So, for the rest of the hour, try to do a little city, working your way around a center point. Give yourself some roads. Make some buildings that are back behind, maybe that are taller. And remember, if they are taller buildings, you are not going to be able to see the roof of them. The front side facing you in 1 point perspective is always going to be straight across and straight up and down. That front facing building we never want to let tilt, because that's how we base the rest of the building, is on that tilt the orthogonal line creates. If you want to put windows, draw the line closest to you, go to the vanishing point, from the top and the bottom of that line, and then you can cut things off. If you want to put a doorway in, same thing, you draw the side of the door closest to you. Notice that it's parallel to the front line again. Draw it off into the distance. You can decide how deep, how far, but it's got to be parallel. You can't let it tilt out. Maybe this is like a garage or something. So we'll work on just a kind of city today and just get a little bit of basics of 1 point perspective.